Welcome to From Separation to Settlement, a family law podcast.
Hey, everybody. Welcome to From Separation to Settlement with Jeffrey Hale, a podcast about navigating the legal and emotional journey through family law. I'm your host, Mike Leon. You know, Jeff has dedicated his career to helping families through divorce, custody, other complex legal challenges with compassion and some clear and honest advice. And, you know, today's topic is going to be a difficult one, but it's an incredibly important one to talk about. And that's domestic violence and protective orders in Ohio family law. So, Jeff, thank you for being here.
Thank you. Great to be here.
You know, Jeff, this is such a sensitive topic. I do want to start kind of at a 30,000 foot overview, if you could. Let's just start with the basics. What exactly qualifies as domestic violence under Ohio law?
So under Ohio law, domestic violence is going to be, any attempt by a family or household member to either cause harm or to cause harm to another family or household member. So domestic violence is limited to family or household members or someone who has previously been a spouse or a child of, the alleged perpetrator.
You know, Jeff, this, again, such a tough topic and very important and timely to talk about this stuff. What are some legal protections that are available to someone who is maybe watching this, they feel unsafe, especially during a custody or divorce case?
The obvious one is what we initially start with, always telling our clients, if you feel uncomfortable, contact the police. We've had clients that would contact us and then we have to immediately tell them to contact the police because obviously as attorneys, there's really nothing we can do immediately. Right. So the immediate response is always from the police. Now, after that response, or if you get to the next day and then you meet with your attorney, there are some things that we can try to put in place to help that. We can ask the court for a civil protection order, which there are several types. So there's a domestic violence civil protection order. There's a stalking protection order. There's a sexual oriented offense protection order. So we can decide which one works best for your situation. And with those, you get an immediate hearing. So you go and fill out the paperwork with your client. You get an immediate hearing. It's an ex parte hearing, which means it's only you, your client, and the judge. So your client gets to tell their story without the other side there. Now, if the court deems the acts within that story to rise to the level of domestic violence, then they'll issue an ex parte order that will be good for 7 days, typically for about 7 to 10 days. And then you'll have a full hearing, which will then allow the other side to be there to present their evidence and for the court to determine whether or not there should be a more permanent order.
You kind of high level touched on the three different types of orders. I would love for you to dive a little bit deeper, but also explain to the audience, what's the process for getting this? And then how quickly can someone get the actual protection that they're seeking?
So the domestic violence civil protection order is exactly that. That's pretty much, it's a broad stroke, anything that can be considered domestic violence, which it doesn't have to just be the physical act. It doesn't have to be a physical injury. It can be mental and emotional, can also rise to the level of domestic violence. And even in some instances, when a parent files one on behalf of their child against the other parent, it can be a failure to protect. It can be what would be considered child abuse against that child. So that would cover the civil protection order part of it. Then there's also a civil stalking order. And basically that's exactly what it sounds like, is if you have two people who they're not family members, but one individual continuously contacts or attempts to follow or harass another individual, then they can get a civil protection stalking order, which is meant to obviously order them to stay away from this person, sets the 500 feet rule, and along with other things that they can slide into it to help set the grounds for protection. Now, you'll hear most people say, well, this is just a piece of paper. But the good thing about that piece of paper is the individual who is being restrained does not have to do anything other than violate something on that paper, and they can be immediately arrested. So if they show up and they're less than 500 feet away from you, even if they don't say anything to you, they're in violation of the order. They can be arrested immediately. So it does increase the protection, even though it is a sheet of paper.
You staying on the children. You said something there about kids. I want to ask you, how does a protection order affect custody, visitation, or maybe even property issues in a divorce?
I would say, in a broad view, property it affects a lot less, except that it prevents someone from entering the property where the petitioner, the person asking for the order, is living. It prevents them from entering the home. It prevents them from entering their work, their school, their place of worship, wherever that person is. It prevents them from entering that. Now, that doesn't long term affect property, because a divorce would actually then settle those property disputes.
Right.
Now, the children, on the other hand, as far as it affects custody, now civil protection orders are not meant to be permanent. They can last from 6 months up to 5 years, but they're meant to be kind of an additional protection in place until the court can issue orders, especially in the event of children. They can issue orders that will decide custody, parenting time arrangements, support, and items like that. Now, the civil protection order, in its immediate sense, can give custody to the petitioning party. It can restrict the parenting rights of the other party, and it can also outright suspend them, in which case the respondent, or the person responding to that allegation, can have no parenting time, no contact whatsoever. So it can be very detrimental, it can be helpful or detrimental depending on what side of that of the petitioner or the respondent that our office would be working on.
Jeff, you said the word allegation there. So what would be your advice? Should someone, if they're falsely accused of domestic violence, what would be their advice? What should they do during a family law case?
I tell people all the time that there's not a single argument worth your children or worth going to jail over. So if a situation is getting heated, if it's getting out of control, if voices are starting to be raised, it's just time to leave. You need to just walk out, walk away, cool off, find a friend's house to stay at, because nothing in that house and nothing in that argument is going to be worth your freedom or your family.
Couldn't agree more. Just going back a second though, because you mentioned something on the civil protection order that I wanted to ask you. Are there long-term consequences? Because you said this is something that is short-term, the protection order, but are there long-term consequences like background checks or firearms restrictions if a CPO is granted?
As long as the CPO is in place, then they would be able to see that. But once the time runs on a CPO, if it's not extended by another court order, then those just fade away. They typically dissolve themselves once that time is over.
Okay, that's good to know. Jeff, let me ask you, how do you help clients right now? We've talked about this kind of with allegations and then obviously people that are seeking the order. How do you help clients on both sides of these cases, those that are seeking the protection and those that are defending themselves?
It's really a lot the same way, because really what you do is when the individual comes to us, then obviously we're at that point, we know, is this going to be a petitioner for a protection order, or is this going to be a respondent? And so then we approach it both ways. We want to get their side of the story. We want to, let's say if it's the respondent, then we're going to want to see the petition they were served with. That way we can see what's being said about them. We can get their side of the story. And as we walk through that petition, we can begin to take notes and pull out ways to either offer their defense or to see what the explanation was for the alleged actions. Now, if you're a petitioner, then initially we're just getting your side of the story. But we always warn people that the ex parte is easy enough to get because it's only us and the judge.
Right.
But there's going to be a full hearing. They're going to get a chance to be heard and present evidence. So as you're going through the story, we're going to go ahead and ask our petitioner, ask our client, well, what are they going to say about this? What is the respondent going to say to this allegation about how this may have happened, or what may have caused this. So that way, especially from the petitioner side, we're going to get both sides of the story, hopefully, as close as we can long before that final hearing. Now, on the respondent side, we already have what's been said in the petition. So now we're just getting their story and matching it up to what the petition says and creating our defense that way.
You know, Jeff, and this has been great for everybody out there watching and listening. But first step for somebody right now that's watching this, the first step that they should take today, if they either feel unsafe or if they feel overwhelmed by an accusation, what would be your advice to them?
It'd be to contact an attorney. Our office, our number, give us a call, let us know what's going on. And then the ultimate first step, obviously, in the caveat to calling us, is if you feel unsafe, contact the police. I mean, there's no ramification for contacting them and being a little overzealous. But obviously the ramification, if you feel unsafe and you don't contact the police, is that domestic violence can happen to you.
Right. Jeff, thank you so much for doing this and for all the advice out there. Truly appreciate it.
Thank you for having me.
And thank you for joining us today for another episode of From Separation to Settlement. If you want to speak with Jeff or the team over at Kroner Hale Law Firm, visit kronerlaw.com. And if this episode helped you, do me a favor, please be sure to subscribe, leave us a review and comment, or share it with someone who may need it. I'm Mike Leon.
Thanks for watching. Be sure to hit that like and subscribe button and leave us a review in the comments.